Gee whiz, you've got to be kidding. I didn't see that coming. Have you ever hung up the phone after hearing startling news and said that to yourself? Or perhaps you've had a sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach after being served a subpoena. Remember how it felt the first time you saw somebody give up their ghost? Now, imagine what it would be like if you actually became a gee whiz and had some G-force training to help you unleash your inner G monster before you faced a personal or professional challenge during your medical practice that left you feeling like you just pulled a 4G negative loop or a 9G positive ascent like a Top Gun fighter pilot. Stay tuned to learn how to become a G whiz instead of whizzing on yourself when faced with a positive or negative G situation.
Welcome to the Doctor's Mentor Show. If you believe that medicine is an industry and not a profession, if you enjoy submitting complex reimbursement claims, or you would do another residency just for fun, be advised, you're about to be offended. You should probably leave now.
All this talk about mentoring doctors is ridiculous. I thought doctors learned to do everything better than everyone else the first year of medical school. At least that's the way they act.
If you love assisting patients with vitality breakthroughs, if the right to practice medicine without interference is important, and you want expert tips for practice freedom and profits to support your epic life, welcome aboard and prepare to be blown away. The Doctor's Mentor Show starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Lori Barr.
You may not even know about a 1986 Hollywood blockbuster that increased the Navy's recruitment of men wanting to be fighter pilots by 500%. The movie is Top Gun, starring Tom Cruise. I was a second-year radiology resident at the University of Texas in Galveston when the movie premiered. Today's show comes under the category of
Live.
Galveston, a small barrier island off the Texas Gulf Coast, had been devastated by Hurricane Alicia August 18, 1983, just a few months after I had done a radiology elective there as a fourth-year medical student. It was my first choice in my match list, and I was elated on match day when I matched there. The way our four-year residency was structured, you spent the majority of your first year learning the basics of diagnostic radiology, weekly evening discussions over wine and cheese with Dr. Schreiber, the department chairman, covering the contents of the classic radiology primer by Paul and Jewel. Daily morning conferences where you watched your fellow residents and subspecialty fellows sit in the hot seat and learn by taking the next case the faculty member presented. Sitting in the hot seat yourself and feeling intimidated when you asserted the wrong answer. Taking your first night on call in the early spring of your first year and being so thankful that you remembered what you learned in the hot seat when it felt bad to answer wrongly because here was a real live patient presenting with those same critical findings. From early spring your first year to early spring your second year was when we took the bulk of our in-house radiology call. This tapered off your third year and your fourth year so that you mainly took subspecialty call, if any. That way you had plenty of time after hours to study for your board exams in your third and fourth year of training. It was the best radiology residency on the planet as far as I was concerned. The faculty were real people with real lives outside of the hospital. Take Dr. Swisschuk, the internationally acclaimed pediatric radiologist with whom I studied during residency and my fellowship, for instance. Most Galvestonians knew him best as the guy who strung tennis rackets and did awesome monogramming in their family business, who could be seen jogging toward the west end of the island every morning or playing tennis himself. Or take the residency program director, Dr. Sanford Rubin, renowned chest radiologist. Dr. Rubin always let us call him Sandy. He and his wife always had a menagerie of animals at their amazing home, and he was an avid fisherman. Even the residents had lives outside of the hospital. 4 of our residents at that time had a string quartet and regularly played classical music gigs. I learned to windsurf and got certified as a PADI dive master while in my radiology residency. Everyone in the department was encouraged to grow, and that meant that everyone in the department failed sometimes. Well, I can think of one attending who would never admit to failure. If you were in Galveston at that time, you can guess to whom I refer. And aside from that attending, everyone else was pretty transparent about how to learn from mistakes. The fact of life is growing is a process of attempts, setbacks, attempts, progress, attempts, setbacks, attempts, progress, and eventually mastery. No matter what you master, there will still be obstacles, challenges, and setbacks. My aim with today's show is to pull 6 G's from the movie Top Gun that if you put them into practice now will assist you in gaining the maximum learning when you face a growth opportunity.
Today's topic.
Become a G-whiz. Grrr, grrr, grrr. Humor me and growl for me right now. Remember how Tony the Tiger says it in the commercial? Say it right now. Great! What did your body do when you made the grrr sound? Did your abdominal muscles tighten? Did you bear down? The first 2 G's I'd like to make you aware of from Top Gun flight training that assists the doctor facing a personal or professional challenge is G-force physiology. G stands for gravity, and that means go to ground. It can mean death for a pilot and for a doctor. Instead, let's master those first 2 G's, grit or ground. It's a choice that you can make instead of going to ground. When you are doing aerial maneuvers, you experience positive and negative pressure situations that alter your human physiology. Specifically, positive G forces force the blood toward your feet and away from your brain, and eventually you'll black out. Negative G's force too much blood into the head and can result in hemorrhages at weak points in the blood-brain barrier. Doesn't that sound like some of the days in your practice? Depending upon the gravity of the situation, you experience the emotional impact of those events as a weight upon your shoulders and your psyche. Has it ever taken your breath away, made your hand shake, or even left you feeling faint so that you wanted to sit down? Other days, how does it feel when you are greeted with news that elates you? Did you feel light as a feather? Be careful. Some in medicine have been known to get a big head or God complex when they bask in personal pride for the success they see around them. Fighter pilots and aerial acrobats become G-masters and G-monsters. They practice specific exercises that help them alter their own physiology during the extremes of positive G's, where they choose to grit, and negative G's, where they choose to ground. The AGSM is the anti-G straining maneuver, specifically designed to protect the amount of blood to the brain during positive G forces. It consists of straining down against a closed glottis, the grit, while simultaneously contracting the muscles of the calves, thighs, and shoulders with short sips of air of less than 1 second every 3 to 4 seconds. Typically, when a doctor gets bad news or experiences an adverse outcome in the hospital, he or she still has to function as a doctor, at least for the duration of the code, the work shift, or the night on call. Most of us try to force ourselves to relax and to calm down, yet in the moment, that may not be the best way to control our physiology, since relaxing takes blood away from the brain. Choose to grit instead, and try a modified AGSM maneuver the next time you need more blood and oxygen to your brain. Grit your teeth and strain down with your glottis closed. Valsalva maneuver. Contract your thighs. Take a sip of air. Contract your buttocks. Sip air. Contract your abdominals. Sip air. Contract your chest and shoulders. Sip air. Flex your arms and clench your fists and take another sip of air. Follow this with 5 deep breaths, belly breaths. Do you feel more alert? According to the docs over at GoFlightMed.com, experts in aerospace medicine, pilots are trained to do the AGSM maneuver to the point that they just do it automatically without thought when they start to feel positive G forces. Now imagine how it will feel when you practice this modified AGSM along with training yourself to recognize small increases in external pressure on you. Maybe it's the way you feel when the phone rings for the 5th time when you're in the middle of a complex chart review. Remember, for a motor skill to become automatic, It takes between 1,200 and 1,500 repetitions. Those numbers coming from the rehab literature on retraining stroke victims at motor tasks like brushing their teeth. What about during those periods of elation when you're so excited and high it feels like your head might explode with pride? And it worked! This is the equivalent of the pilot's negative G-forces. That's supposedly the more uncomfortable of the two situations pilots get into. What do? Most of us jump up and down and say, yes, while straining down. Have you ever done that? Like where you pull your elbow back by your side and say yes at the same time and you actually do strain down? Yes! Guess what? Pilots do the exact opposite. They ground themselves. No, not literally. Physically. Professional aerobatic pilots train themselves to engage in physical grounding automatically when they start to roll into negative Gs. They relax completely so that more blood moves into their legs and nether regions and away from their brains and eyeballs. So even if you are driving, you can ground yourself right now. Simply exhale and let go. No, don't let go of the steering wheel. Let go of any muscular tension you are holding and let yourself feel heavy in the parts of your body that are dependent, like your bottom in the seat of your car or chair and your feet on the floorboard or floor. Imagine how it will feel when you have practiced this relaxation technique 1,200 to 1,500 times, along with training yourself to recognize small decreases in the external pressures on you. Like when you read the operative report and your clinical suspicions about a patient are confirmed. Yes. Or maybe you just found out you passed your boards. I know you want to jump up and down. And what does it feel like to actually ground yourself? And exhale instead. Yes. You take in that feeling of satisfaction at a very deep level and can really enjoy it. Your first two G's in becoming a G-whiz are, in the face of positive G's, choose to grit, and in the face of negative G's, choose to ground, the exact opposite of what comes naturally. This is an acquired skill, and it will take practice to master and become a G-whiz. The second two G's to be aware of from Top Gun are grasp and grow. Do you remember how Maverick and Goose got recommended for Top Gun school in the first place? Maverick, Tom Cruise's character, chooses to perform a maneuver in his F-14 plane that disproves intelligence information about the enemy plane, the MiG-28. Granted, this movie is fiction, and there is general consensus among military aviation experts and aerial acrobatic pilots that the dialogue and what was portrayed in this scene is pure fiction. However, the principle about proving the impossible possible or succeeding at something formerly viewed as impossible is sound. Here's the skinny on doing the impossible. My father is a marine engineer and spent the majority of his career in the United States Coast Guard. His motto is, "The impossible just takes a little longer." He was commended for this during his military career, and I have seen that holds true for him time and again, personally and professionally, most recently proving true as he overcame the most serious health challenge of his life. No, I'm not talking about him surviving armed robbery where he was shot in the head and abdomen and had to run a mile to save his life 40 years ago, or his victory over prostate cancer 29 years ago. If you want more adventures like those, check out my other show, Think and Grow Well. The motto, "The impossible just takes longer," holds true throughout human history. For example, it took the British 5 years to go from near surrender in World War II, when Hitler had conquered Europe, to victory. Now, many in the British aristocracy and Parliament thought it was impossible. Yet under the leadership of King George VI and Prime Minister Winston Churchill, they succeeded at the impossible. How do you do that? The impossible? You simply start with the second G's, grasp and grow. You find a way to grasp what is possible in this situation, and that starts by recognizing every situation as a growth opportunity instead of seeing it as an obstacle or an impossibility. So while you are gritting, go ahead and say to yourself, this is interesting, another growth opportunity. I wonder what's possible in this situation. Now, this may sound easy, and in times of great trial, it is easier if you have practiced it ahead of time. You may be familiar with the adage, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. Maverick, in Top Gun, is coming to the aid of one of his comrades in the famous Watch the Birdie scene, where he learns that the MiG-28 can survive a 4G inverted dive that is supposedly impossible for this aircraft to withstand. He tries what his training has taught him, and he cannot get the shot. So, he entertains a new idea, a very risky idea, and an idea that was the unthinkable. He flies his plane upside down at close range to the opponent's cockpit and displays an obscene gesture, proving to the opponent in this aerial competition that he could take him out if he wanted to do it, even if it cost him his plane and his life. This act startles the opponent to the point of backing off. Voila! Success! It's possible. So let's break this down with regard to grasp and grow. Number 1, when faced with a challenge, apply what you have learned, and then if things seem impossible, go to step 2. Step 2, recognize the growth opportunity and ask yourself in a state of childlike wonder, what is possible? Maverick does this when he says something like, I can't shoot this son of a gun. Let's see if we can have a little fun with him. Number 3, grasp 2 things. What is at stake if you succeed and if you fail? And what is within your power to influence or control? These are the tools you have to work with as you start changing what seems impossible into something that is possible. Knowing what is at stake gives you the emotional buy-in to keep up, to try, to go forward. Knowing what you have to work with lets you become more creative as you invent a new solution. Number 4, let go of anything you cannot control or that does not assist you in growing and achieving the impossible. Just because he was told that the MiG-28 couldn't do something did not stop Maverick from believing it when he saw it or performing the maneuver with his plane once he weighed the risks and assessed his own abilities in light of this situation. Number 5, implement without hesitation. Go forward with the confidence necessary to succeed. This may be the most difficult step when facing the impossible. Often when facing a challenge, our subconscious mind, in its desire to protect us and help us survive, will bring to the conscious mind memories of past similar situations and how those turned out. Revisiting past failures and missteps can diminish confidence. It's really helpful at times like these to have a repository of your own success memories that you can consciously shift your attention toward. So for example, let's say you're a surgeon and you're about to try a procedure that's more risky than your usual surgical schedule, and this particular case may require some improvisation and modification of the techniques you've previously employed. Your subconscious mind may present you with a memory of a similar case from your residency that had a bad outcome, evoking all the feelings you felt at that time of the event. It may be feelings of inadequacy or what ifs, right? What if I'd have done this instead? Thank God you have the power to choose what happens next. You can choose to perform the current procedure in the state of mind and the emotional quandary you're in, or you can choose to entertain a new idea. You can say to yourself, that thought and those feelings belong to another place at another time, and they do not serve me in this moment. Instead, I choose to feel the way I felt when I assisted with the birth of my child and helped that life that I co-created out of the womb and into my arms for the very first time. After all, I hadn't done that exact thing before, and yet it was a miraculous success, and it felt amazing. Now, isn't that a different energy to go into that surgery with? An energy of calm confidence that you know already how to do things that you've never done before because they're similar to something that you have succeeded at in the past? The growth opportunity you're facing may have a longer time course than just the length of a surgical procedure. Like, for instance, if your competence is called into question, it is extremely helpful to have a mentor who can remind you of what the real problem is when self-doubt starts compounding your challenge. Remember the scene from Top Gun when Maverick is really thinking about retiring even after the Board of Inquiry clears him from wrongdoing concerning Goose's death? He goes to visit Viper, chief instructor for the Top Gun flight school, on a Sunday afternoon. Viper shares what really happened to Maverick's father regarding a growth opportunity his father faced as a pilot and was blackballed after it happened. Once Maverick knows the truth about that incident, Viper asks him, What's on your mind, son? Maverick replies, my options, sir. Now listen for the real problem Viper, his mentor, alerts Maverick to as he answers.
Simple. First, you've acquired enough points to show up tomorrow and graduate with your Top Gun class. Or you can quit. There'd be no disgrace. That spin was hell. It would have shook me up. So you think that I should quit? I didn't say that. The simple fact is you feel responsible for Goose, and you have a confidence problem. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blow sunshine up your ass, Lieutenant. A good pilot is compelled to evaluate what's happened so he can apply what he's learned. Up there, we gotta push it. That's our job. It's your option, Lieutenant. All yours. All yours.
That's right. Maverick is alerted by his mentor to two extremely important ideas that are both within his own control. His problem is his self-confidence, and his strength is he has the power to choose his next action, as do all of us human beings. Just for review, the first two G's are grit or ground. The second two G's are grasp and grow. That's a total of 4 G's so far from Top Gun. The last 2 G's to bring our total to 6 are go forth with gratitude. Go picks up where we left off before. Keep moving. Go forth. If you've ever driven a tricycle, a tractor, or a TRW RQ5 Hunter, then you know you cannot turn the vehicle around if it is not moving. The same is true with you and your practice. You must go on. It really doesn't matter in which direction initially. The point is, without movement, there is no ability to turn and get back on course from a misstep or a flat-out failure. Do you know what Maverick said to Viper after he reminded him about confidence being his problem and the power he had to choose his outcome? He said, "Sorry to bother you on a Sunday, sir, but thank you very much for your time." He expressed gratitude and then decided to go forward, and he graduated with his class. Can you be grateful in the face of a challenge? Can you be grateful in the face of a challenge? Imagine how your relationships will be when you have practiced being grateful and going on for so many small growth opportunities that present themselves during your day that going on with gratitude simply becomes who you are. If I had to select just 1 G as the most important to take away from Top Gun or any challenge you face personally or professionally, it would be the G, growth. Growing is an integral part of what a living being does. Think about a plant. What a miracle that the blueprint for a large tree can be contained in a tiny seed. What is the opposite of growth? Dying. Going to ground. It's part of the duality of being alive. Everything that lives is both growing and dying simultaneously. It's only when the equilibrium of healthy growth and death is unstable that problems like cancer and wasting disease occur. When you face a challenge, it is your choice to view it with wonder and amazement as a growth opportunity. And this becomes easier if you practice the techniques I've shared and become a gee whiz instead of just saying, gee whiz.
Your next step.
Become the gee whiz by implementing the 6 G's we've covered and lock the learning in by watching the Top Gun movie. Number 1, play with the grit and ground maneuvers for the next week. And let me know what you think by leaving me a message at thedoctorsmentor.com. Number 2, cultivate your childlike wonder and amazement as you grasp what is possible and grow by reframing your challenges as growth opportunities. Links to some resources for building this skill can be found in the show notes. I'd love to have you share your growth opportunities with me on a future show. You can apply to be a guest at thedoctorsmentor.com. Number 3, get your gratitude on by actually writing down what you're thankful for in the current growth opportunities you are moving through, and go forth with gratitude. Guess what? The sequel to Top Gun, called Top Gun Maverick, is something people have been on the lookout for since the 1980s. What do you call it when it takes 32 years to get a movie into production? Persistence. And that is exactly the mental muscle you will be building if you actually practice these 6 G's until you become a gee whiz.
There's more to explore at thedoctorsmentor.com.
Remember, you alone get to choose how you think, feel, and act regarding the growth opportunities that present themselves to you. Your current condition is simply a reflection of past choices you have made. Exercise your power to choose each thought that dominates your conscious mind, and you'll be amazed at the change that you'll see in a surprisingly short period of time. Gee whiz! I'm Lori Barr, and one idea is all it takes to change your world.
Are you stopping at a hospital? Hello? Don't you know that hospitals are one of the sickest places on the planet? Don't touch anything in there and get out as fast as you can.